With our feature interview for this program with Itamar Rabinovich. He was Israel's chief negotiator with Syria in the 90s, served as Israel's ambassador to the U.S. at the time of the Oslo Accords, and continues to provide insights through the many books and leadership positions he's had with think tanks and public policy centers here and in the United States. Most recently, he's president of the Israel Institute, and let's take a look at the interview. Itamar Rabinovich, thank you so much for opening your home to us during this Jewish high holiday season.
My pleasure.
It's a period where we're marking 3 significant anniversaries. The 45 years since the Yom Kippur War, 40 years since the Camp David Accords, and 25 years since Bill Clinton literally nudged that handshake between Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat on the White House lawn. And instead of engaging in woulda, shoulda, coulda, let's focus on what now? Starting with the Palestinians, please.
You know, the one state would mean no Jewish state. And one state eventually is going to be an Arab state. So it has to be a two-state solution, a Jewish state, which is the nation state of the Jewish people, and a Palestinian state, which is the nation state of the Palestinians. Not all Palestinians will live in that state, and not all Jews will live in Israel, but each of these nationalities or nations will have its own nation state. This is not easy, this is not immediately accessible, but this is what should be.
So the two-state solution is still viable? It's not dead?
It is still viable, not for long, and I think we need to take steps. Actually, I'm part of a group that next month will present a plan through the Institute of National Security Studies as to how this can be averted. Israel can take steps, first by consent, and if there is no partner, unilaterally, in order to prevent the drift towards two-statehood. One-statehood, I'm sorry.
Will this study be released prior to President Trump's long-awaited peace plan?
I guess so, because I don't see the Trump plan being released anytime soon. So actually we've waited for quite a while. It's been ready for a while because we didn't want to publish something that is a plan for less than a full two-state solution when the president presumably is going to be laying his own plan. But this does not seem to be happening, so I think our plan will be released.
So you don't expect anything significant to come from the Trump peace plan, assuming it comes?
Not anytime soon. You know, I think that the president and his team are very friendly to Israel. I believe they genuinely want to see a peaceful solution. But I think the way that has been followed is full of errors. And I think they ran into lots of problems in their relationship with the Palestinians and with the larger Arab world. They expected the Sunni Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and so forth, to endorse and support. They did not. And I think they realized that they cannot proceed right now.
Now, many here are convinced that time is on Israel's side. The economy is flourishing. The prime minister is welcomed in capitals across the globe. Relations with Sunni Arab states in this region are strengthening. So why not wait things out and just adapt to the fact that wars here will have to be fought every few years?
Yeah, that's not a great choice. Every few years a war will be fought here because, you know, we don't want any war, and definitely not the kind of war that may happen. Just think about the arsenal of rockets and missiles that Hezbollah has and what the next war might look like. So I think any war should be averted. Second, you know, when time is on your side, you should capitalize. There's no greater illusion than expecting that time will always be on your side. And of course, part of the test of statesmanship is to identify the moment when time is still on your side, when you can make a good deal and capitalize on it rather than wait and then lose the edge. In any event, I think that the role of academics, intellectuals, policy mavens is to put their ideas in the public sphere and let the public debate and decide.
On Syria, where you spent years negotiating with Hafez al-Assad, the father, is anything in all those briefing books on position papers and maps, is anything still relevant after all that's transpired under Bashar al-Assad, the son?
Not right now. Actually, they were relevant until the eve of the outbreak of the civil war, because Netanyahu was negotiating with Bashar al-Assad through American mediators into the spring of 2011. But of course, once the civil war broke out, and Syria is not a normal country now, and Bashar al-Assad is a war criminal, I don't think that even if an Israeli prime minister in the coming years would be interested in making a deal with Bashar al-Assad, he or she would have the support, the legitimacy given by or needed from the Israeli public. The Israeli public will not accept a peace deal with a man like Bashar al-Assad. There'll have to be a change in Syria.
On the issue of the Golan Heights, most here cringe at the prospect of this area ever reverting back to Syria. Do you support efforts to gain world support for Israel's permanent sovereignty over the Golan Heights?
No, I don't. I think that for the past 7 years, we've been very successful in not being drawn into the Syrian civil war and crisis. That it is a crisis that is seen domestically and regionally and internationally as a Syrian, Arab, Russian, Iranian affair. This is not, quote unquote, because of Israel or part of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Why do we have to plunge into that mud, announce an annexation of the Golan Heights, and help Bashar, something he would very much like to see, turn it into an Arab-Israeli issue? So, you know, the status quo, you mentioned it before, the status quo in the Golan is what it is. There's no immediate threat to that status quo. I know that settlers and their supporters like to see full certainty, but sometimes you have to compromise on less than full certainty.
Prime Minister Netanyahu this week said a major lesson from the '73 war was the government's failure at the time to order a preemptive attack. He called it a grave error that Israel will never repeat. Do you support the Prime Minister's preemptive strategy vis-a-vis Iran and Syria, and the way that he's working with Putin, or at least trying to work with Putin, to secure the maneuvering room he needs to support Israel's red lines in Syria?
Yeah, you know the famous cliché, never say never. You know, I don't believe in making these absolute statements for the future. Every case has to be judged on its own. Yes, preemptive strikes are often wise, or in most cases wise. But let's say in '73, the reason that the government declined to launch a preemptive strike was a commitment to the United States, that the United States will support for that time the status quo, and Israel will undertake not to launch a war. That was a very specific situation. If that situation doesn't repeat itself, things will change.
Finally, the U.S.-Israel alliance, strategic cooperation has never been better, and politically, the two governments seem to be so intimately aligned. And do you have any cautionary words to such a blissful state of bilateral affairs?
You use the term intimacy or intimate. I am worried by the intimate relationship with an administration that is controversial in the United States, with low approval ratings, particularly so in the Jewish community, and even more so among the younger generation in the Jewish community. This embrace between Netanyahu and Trump is costing us support among some of our staunchest supporters, and we have yet to see the effectiveness of Trump's foreign policy on issues like North Korea, Iran, Turkey, and so forth. There was a lot of talk, some action, and few results yet.
Ambassador Itamar Rabinovich, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.